Hello, Empowered Woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman podcast. Today I talked with Becky Morrison, lawyer turned happiness coach, book author, international speaker, and mom of two. We talked about how to balance happiness and success by understanding happiness is not necessarily a byproduct of success. It was such a great conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to start believing in yourself, giving yourself permission to succeed, and let your voice be heard to make an impact in the world as an entrepreneur, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Becky. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks. Hi, Marta. It's great to be here.
Yay. All right. Well, before I jump right into this, what I know will be an amazing interview with Becky, I just want to remind everybody to make sure and not only take written notes, mental notes, but share this with us. As podcasters, all we have is your feedback, right? Because I don't get live comments like live videos on social media. So I would love for you to take this to social media or to my email box, or if you want to send me letters, I would love that too. I would need to give you my address. But anyway, send me your feedback. Take a screenshot of this episode, tag me on social media, and you'll be able to tag Becky as well once you see all her info in the show notes. Let us know what stood out to you. What were some of the ahas that you had, some of the breakthroughs, some of the golden nuggets, because I know there will be several of them. It helps us as we're creating content. It helps me to know what is resonating, what kind of guests you're interested in having. So I would love for you to do that. Please do it. And without further ado, welcome again, Becky. I would love for you to introduce yourself. I've loved so far what I've seen about your work and your book and your message. So tell us more.
Sure. So, in short, I am a mom, a wife, and a lawyer turned happiness coach, author of a book called The Happiness Recipe, A Powerful Guide to Living What Matters. And I also speak on topics related to happiness and well-being. And I'm about to launch a podcast for folks in the legal industry that I'm co-hosting focused on well-being. So that's coming soon. Probably might be out by the time this episode drops. But in a nutshell, when I tell people that, right, they're like, you're a lawyer turned happiness coach. I need to hear more. I need to understand, how does that happen?
Right.
And, there's a couple ways I could answer that question, but I like to start with a story. And the story goes like this. About 16 years ago, I was a practicing litigator working on a big trial, getting ready for that trial. And I found myself one evening, probably around 7:30, 8 o'clock, sitting on the floor of the bathroom. And at the time, my husband was working in counterterrorism, and he had been called into work because something had literally blown up in the world and he needed to go deal with it. And we had a toddler, and I had my toddler in the bathtub. And I had the cordless phone clipped to the back of my pants, and I had the toilet seat cover, and I had the notebook on the toilet seat cover, and I had paper spread all around me. And I was doing two things. I was bathing my toddler daughter, who is about to graduate from high school, and was preparing an expert for their upcoming testimony. And I had two thoughts in very quick succession. The first thought was, who says you can't do it all? I'm literally here. I'm here with my daughter. I'm a present parent. I'm an awesome parent. I'm enjoying being a parent. I'm also having a lot of professional success. I'm doing well at work. I'm on partnership track. I am good at being a lawyer. And then my next thought was, and I'm exhausted, and this is unsustainable. And I'm not sure that even though I'm good at being a lawyer, that it's actually making me happy. And so that launched an inquiry that kind of took me on a little bit of a winding path through the course of my career, trying to figure out, how do we balance happiness and success? And what I've really learned since then, and now what I do and work with people to do, is actually use happiness and well-being. And by well-being, I mean that in the broadest sense, as fuel for performance, success, and satisfaction. So have sort of taken my own journey and then all of the things I've learned, including getting certified as a coach at Berkeley, to work with other people who can relate to that story, who've been that person who checked all the boxes, did the shoulds, and they're wondering, wait a minute, I thought I'd earned happiness already, or earned satisfaction, or earned fulfillment, and it's not here. What do I do?
Oh my gosh, this is so powerful. And I feel like more and more people doing what you're doing, sharing this specific story is so helpful because there are so many of us, especially moms, living a similar situation and then hitting that point where it's like, I should be happy, but I'm not. And we start wondering, what is wrong with me? Because then we look at other people and they may seem like they are happy doing similar things, right? Well, we don't know the reality, but we create stories in our heads and then we feel like there's something wrong, right? We feel like we're doing it wrong or whatever it is. So I love that you took this opportunity not only to find this out for yourself, but to then share, turn around and share and help other people, other women in a similar situation. And what you said was beautiful. Find a balance between happiness and success, because oftentimes, and that's a lot of what it is portrayed in many ways out there, is that success is happiness. And that is problematic because, first of all, what is success, right? Mm-hmm. So that's important to define. You know, everyone has a different definition. I'd love for you to expand on that. And then understanding that success on its own, even if you define it like degrees, blah, 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 it does not mean that you're going to be satisfied or fulfilled. Whoa. So there's lots to this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I have this image of like, it's sort of like, and I use happiness as a catch-all phrase to really talk about sort of living in a fulfilled, sort of whole, high well-being way. It's not just about the experience of being happy. So I want to clarify that terminology, which is like the least lawyerly thing I could do, which is to use a term imprecisely, but I do it all the time. Because I haven't found the word yet that it conveys all of that without a full sentence, but I talk about it in terms of happiness. And, you know, we get caught up and we have this notion, I think we're taught this idea that that success is that happiness is a side effect of success, that it will be an outcome. And actually it's like the complete opposite. Living in a wholehearted, whole-souled, well kind of way. And I mean well in the broadest sense. I mean mind, body, and soul. Right. That's what results in achievement, what results in performance, what results in doing the things that we want, you know, getting us where we want to go. Now, back to your other question, which is, what is success? I mean, that's an important question. Where do we want to go versus where we've been told we should go, and what should matter in terms of outcomes and summits that we might reach, right? I think, again, we are not encouraged, certainly not in the US, by anything in the sort of global media or even the school system to be really tuned into how are we wired? How do we tick? And what matters most to us? Because for me, success is a highly individual inquiry. And it really comes down to living a life in each season where you are doing mostly what matters to you and as little of the rest as possible.
That's deep. I love it.
And that's like a simple statement. And this is where I am being a lawyer, because it's a very few words, but there's a lot behind it, right? So how do we unpack this layer cake of things that live behind that statement to really figure out, what is it that matters most to me? Right. What is it that matters most to me in this season of my life?
Right.
Because those of us who've been through some transitions in life know that it changes. What mattered to me changed radically when I became a parent. What mattered to me has changed radically a number of times over the course of my parenting. And so being able to define a season, define the boundaries of the season, it's almost like a playing field. And then what are the rules for this game? This season's game has these rules, and I can let go of the things that are out of bounds of this season. I don't have to worry about that I'm not doing this or not doing that, because that's a whole different game that I'm either not playing or I'm going to play at a different time. And so learning some of that is just learning how to be more contained and more present in the life we're actually living, but then also tuning into this greater purpose, this greater sense of meaning and engagement, and figuring out what that is for us individually.
Yeah. Well, the analogy of the game is beautiful, because at times we feel like we're playing a billion games at the same time, or we're stuck in the game that we don't want to play.
Yeah.
Thinking about it in that way, it could really prompt some reflection. And something that came to me that I have been thinking about a lot lately, especially when it comes to coaching. Well, you said tuning in to figure out what matters to you most, and then doing more of that and less of the other stuff. I don't think we are encouraged enough to do that, because people are just we are just told what it is that matters, right? We grow up and people tell us, our parents, the system, whatever, they tell us what matters. But then something that I've noticed being in the coaching space for the last 5 years is that there's a lot of resistance to reflecting what matters. And I wanted to expand on that because I've been noticing this as a fear of going outside the bounds in a way of what has already been established. But that's the very thing that's keeping you stuck playing a game you don't want to play.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that self-sabotage of when you are exposed to a coach or to this scenario of, okay, then please go at it, reflect on what it is. We don't know what to do.
Well, yeah. I mean, and so my book, this is like my book is centered here, right? Okay. My book is, the premise is the happiness recipe, or the recipe for maximum happiness is do more of what matters to you and less of the rest. And it's bounded by seasons, and it requires knowing what that is. And so I call that the sort of authenticity gap, that self-knowledge, self-connection piece. The second gap that we run into that we often skip is the one you're referring to. And I call it the emotional energy gap, but you could also call it the mindset gap.
Right.
Do we have the beliefs and feelings that allow us to A, engage in this exploration, and then B, execute on this exploration? It's almost like we have to build this bridge with our beliefs and feelings before we can take any action to close what I call the third gap, which is, are we actually living this recipe? So we know it, we believe it, and then we do it. And you, I mean, the amount of time that I spend as a coach in that middle gap, it's not why people come looking for you. You don't, I mean, sometimes people come and say, I know I need to do some mindset work.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't mean to say that doesn't happen, but people really, I mean, we are an action-driven society. It's like, I don't like this game I'm playing. Help me find a new game. Cool. But I guarantee you, we're going to have to spend a bunch of time in this bridge area, figuring out where are you limiting yourself in your inquiry, in your action? What beliefs do you have about what games you're allowed to play?
Yes.
Do you believe that you're allowed to invent your own game? What if, and then going back even to the simple recipe, what I also find is a big belief that gets in the way. You know, we talk about doing more of what matters and less of the rest. And when I say it, I almost say the less of the rest, like it's like an afterthought. It is actually central to doing this. And we have this notion, we are programmed with this notion that more is more. I want more, I must do more. For most people, the first step to having more is doing less.
Right.
And can you get there from a belief and feeling perspective? Will your nervous system let you slow down? Will your nervous system allow you to be still? Because there is a danger, like a very primitive danger in stillness, right?
Right.
Can you work through that to be still, to do the reflection, to do the thinking, to look at the beliefs, to build the right beliefs and feelings, which take practice and time like any other habit.
Yes.
And then from that place, instead of getting out of the game you don't like, let's get into a game you do.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay. So many different things here. Because you got me thinking about, I've been bringing this in, I think, in every interview. I watched this one documentary on Netflix called Animal, and it's all different episodes. It's specific, like lions, birds, or I don't know, felines. It's different. And you get to see how amazing everything works without them having to have textbooks or, you know, having a coach. They're their own coaches and everything happens. And then you talk about primitive, because that was one of the things that I was going to ask you is we have this resistance to slowing down. We always think that in order to get what we want, we need to do more things. And oftentimes it's dropping things, because that's what's cluttering our mind in our headspace to actually see what it is that matters so we can focus on that. And in many ways, we add more things as distractions so that we don't do the things that matter. And we're just stuck in this place. So again, the sabotage, right? The self-sabotage. And I was going to ask you, like, why do we struggle so much to slow down? Is it something conditioned by the environment? But then you said there is danger in stillness. And in thinking about nature, that is true too. If you're just, you know, coasting there, somebody may come from around the bush and kill your babies,
Yes.
or kill you. So tell me more about that, because that fired lots of things in my brain.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one for me. I think like I said, at a very primitive level, like a still animal is easy prey. And so there is this, I think, underlying all of it, this natural inclination within our nervous system programming to be in motion.
Yeah.
Like either whether that's intellectual motion or physical motion or both. And so slowing down is really hard. I think there are other patterns though, then that get taught to our nervous system. So I think about the part of our nervous system that controls our fight, flight, or freeze response as sort of like our operating system on a very basic level. And our operating system gets programmed by experiences in our life. First of all, it gets programmed by nature. Yeah. Then it gets programmed by experiences in our lives, including maybe experiences that have come to us through generations. And it doesn't get, unlike your iPhone, when you plug it in overnight, it doesn't get the latest iOS upgrade. Like it doesn't get the new rule that makes more sense in the current situation. It's stuck with the rule that it learned when you were 6, that is a very black and white rule. And so this is true whether we've experienced capital T trauma as a child or whether we were just kids.
Yeah.
Every child learns dysfunctional patterns. And by dysfunctional, I mean patterns that no longer serve them.
Right.
And it's our job to take our ego mind and update our nervous system operating system. And that is not something that we are taught how to do. Nobody tells you, like, I'll give an example. I grew up getting affirmation for good grades, right? Like when I achieved, I got love. It's not that my parents didn't love me other times, but I remember specifically a link from achievement to love. So guess what did I want to do when I got to be an adult? Achieve.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how it worked anymore when I was 20. Like love came from other places, even when I was 15, but I didn't know that. I didn't feed that data back into my nervous system to say, time out. Even if you don't get this A, you're still going to be loved. And so then it becomes this like need to achieve in order to have love. And I don't even know what's motivating my need to achieve. I'm not even tuned into that. And so part of it is unpacking all of that programming, all of that patterning, and figuring out how do we reprogram it. Sometimes awareness is frankly enough to reprogram it, to be really clear. Like you maybe don't need to do a ton of work, maybe just recognizing, oh, I'm trying to get the A so that I can be lovable. I'm in a loving relationship. I don't need an A. He's going to love me whether I get the promotion or not. Like it's okay. And just continuing to have that conversation with my nervous system of like, it's cool. We're going to be safe even if this doesn't happen.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot. I don't know if that answered your question about why stillness is dangerous, but I mean, there's just layers and layers of patterning that we're not taught to process. And it leads us to having all kinds of behavioral responses that no longer serve us.
Right. Well, and it's so important, I think, to bring awareness, at least in my coaching. I oftentimes, when I talk about childhood wounds or I talk about childhood trauma, somebody will come up and say, I had an amazing childhood. And they won't recognize what you just said. That's so important. I need to repeat it again. You learned dysfunctional patterns and behaviors just because you're human and your parents are human. It's not because they're doing something tragic or abusive necessarily, which some people do experience. And that obviously affects their future and how, life unfolds for them. But all of us, just like what you said, I associated this. That's what my brain interpreted it as. And so I carried this on into my adult life and I don't know where it comes from. So it is an important part of life to decide to look back and understand where that association came from so that you can undo that and create different patterns in your brain to be like, it's safe for me to get a B. No one's gonna, No,
I will still be loved. I'll still be connected. And I think, look, it comes down to this. If you consider a child at least in the United States, under the age of 12, we are dependent on the adults around us.
Yeah.
In most cases, for basic needs: food, shelter, physical safety, and connection and love. Okay. And so start there. Then we are also immature, like just by definition. Yeah. Kid is not thinking at the level of sophistication. Kid's nervous system is not receiving at the level of sophistication that an adult would. We're not making gray decisions. We're making black and white decisions. Right. We're making decisions like I push this button, I get this result. That's what I want. I'm going to keep pushing that button. And so that inevitably, like you said, I mean, my parents are fantastic. They're some of my favorite people in the world. I had a really, what I would call a spectacular childhood. That doesn't mean that I don't have these black and white patterns that no longer serve me because I know I'm operating in a world of gray.
Right. No, that's wonderful. I love that. And I'm glad that you brought up your book, because that was something I was going to get into it, because I love the premise of it. And you spoke about some of the steps. Can you share more what exactly you're in there? And I also want you to share how you work with people. So people are like, all right, this is amazing. I want to learn more about working with Becky. So tell us more.
Sure. So, I mean, what's in there? So one of the things, I'm kind of I wouldn't say a personal development junkie, but I really am a curious person and I love to learn and I like to read books. And I often find myself reading books that introduce really powerful concepts. And I love it. And then I'm often left thinking, okay, that's great, but now what do I do with that? And so I wanted to write a book that was actually a combination of concept and action. And so this book is really designed to walk you through, if you wanted to start today and say, okay, I need to re-architect my current season, this will walk you from figuring it out to executing on it.
Nice.
With activities, sort of self-guided coaching activities in each chapter. If you didn't want to do all of that work, full re-architecture, and you just want some more tools in your toolbox to kind of dig into various pieces that might shed light on what needs to shift in your life, this is also a book that would help you there. It's, again, organized into the 3 gaps. And so if you're stuck, for example, on guilt, there's a chapter about, I think there's a chapter about guilt. There is a chapter about guilt. There's a chapter about saying no. You forget. I know I talk about it in one of the chapters. And so I think it's just, the common pitfalls that came up, I tried to offer a way that you could start to sort of untangle those a little bit and pull on the threads that might give you some space to figure out what you need to do next. And so it's designed to be kind of like a resource for people to dip their toe in. How would it look to have some coaching questions around these topics or some activities around these topics that could help me think through it? That said, there is also a chapter in there called enlisting support, because we are not meant to do it alone.
Right.
Often when we start digging, we can't see what we need to see from inside the situation. We need somebody outside the situation to help guide us and reflect back kind of what they're seeing or what we're saying. And so that's what I do. I work primarily one-on-one with people, although I also do some within organizations. I've done some group work as well and some education on my book, but then also, like I said, broader positive psychology techniques that you can use to introduce well-being without kind of a full re-architecture. But yeah, so I like to work with clients to figure out how to untangle their happiness, how to find their happiness recipe for this season and really dig in and like use that as a way to propel them to where they want to go. So it's not about abandoning achievement, and it's not about flipping your life upside down. It's not even necessarily about changing the game you're playing. Mm-hmm. But it's like, if you can, sometimes when you can clear out the noise off the field and really just see the game you're trying to play, it's like, oh, this game's all right. This game fits for this season. Yeah. This is the game I want to play right now. And later I might want to play another game, but I can be here because it's meeting my needs in the following ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful that you talk about seasons, because it's true. At times when we're struggling, we may think back and say, I was so happy then, why can't life be so simple? When probably if you asked yourself from back then, you would say it wasn't that great. We create the stories, but still it looks different with time because we evolve and we change and society changes and the people around us changes. So that's why it's an ever evolving work as well. You can start on your own, like you said, by all means, but it is a lot better and a lot less challenging, I guess I should say, because it's still going to put you out of your comfort zone, get you out of your comfort zone, to have somebody guiding you through, because we can't see from within ourselves. There's somebody once shared a quote that I love. You can't see the label from within the bottle.
That's right.
Somebody outside has to read it.
Yep. That's a perfect way to say it. And I think, for me, I wouldn't be a coach if I didn't know the power of coaching by having experienced it. Right. And so I just know that having people on your team, and it could be a coach, it could be a therapist, it could be a clergy person. Like there are lots of different resources that you could use, but there is a difference between having somebody who is wholly invested in you versus somebody who also has their own investment in your outcome.
Totally. And I always say too that, I joke and I say, I started coaching not out of the goodness of my heart. I started it because I needed it, because I was in the journey as well. So might as well bring people with me to keep me accountable. As I encourage them, they encourage me. So that's the beauty of it. I love it. Well, before we wrap up and you tell us how to find you, your book, and all the amazing things you got going on, I would love to do my little rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Okay. So the first one is notice yourself. What comes to mind?
So that's an interesting one, because right now I'm really working on being full-bodied, meaning not just making decisions with my brain, not just taking in the present moment with my brain, but being fully here, being present in all of my body. So when you say notice yourself, I really think about getting just out of the head and dropping into the full body.
I love it. Next one is listen to yourself.
I like this one because it ties really nicely into what I just was saying about full-bodiedness, right? And a big part of what I'm learning to do is trust my intuition. And for me, my intuition lives not in my brain, but in my body. And listening to myself means trusting those body signals that I get and not needing to intellectually always explain them. If I know it's right, it's right. If I know it's wrong, it's wrong. And I don't need to offer the pro and con list to support it.
Attorney style.
Yes. Yeah. Like the response, like the evidence to say this is why this is the right decision. Right. No, it feels right. It feels right. And I'm going to trust that.
Just do it. I love it. The next one is forgive yourself.
Oh boy, don't we all need that? I mean, it's not a surprise, right? We are definitely our own harshest critics. And I find that in general, something you said earlier made me think of this too. We are uncomfortable with processing our emotions.
Yeah.
We're taught to disconnect from them in a very early age. And I'm finding the more comfortable that I get, the more I am finding as I'm processing things that happened or where I sit today, I get angry at past me. And being able to release that anger through forgiveness, I think is what allows us to release it, to be here, not there.
That's so powerful. That's so true. It's what we do that. We get angry with ourselves. It's all the versions of ourselves. We need to learn to let go of that. Next one is empower yourself.
So this is about, for me, I have this superhero stance in my head, right? It's about owning your light. And we all have our own unique light. We all have our own unique gifts that we bring to the world. And one of the things that I see, particularly because I work with a lot of high achievers and in law firms more than other places, but it's kind of universally true, we bring part of ourselves to work, for example. And to me, empower yourself is about being whole, showing up as your whole self in all situations, being fully who you are, and owning the fact that you're unique and that is good.
Love it. And last but not least, transform yourself.
So transform is kind of, and I mean this in no way as a criticism or judgment, it is a loaded word, right?
Oh yeah.
It has this notion that we need to look totally different or be totally different.
Yep.
I actually find some of the most powerful transformation comes in the most subtle change. And so transform yourself means, to me, when you say it, I think honor the parts of you that need to change, that need to move, that need to be evolve, that need to be released, or that need to be called back. But it does not mean you have to become somebody ever other than who you are.
Right. Yeah. Because oftentimes we think transformation has to be this huge thing, but it really is compounding of small changes that turn into something big, but not into something big. Person. I always like to say that, to me, my definition of transforming yourself is becoming a more self-accepting version of you.
I love that.
The ultimate transformation, right? Because this is our lifelong journey, accepting who we are and then broadcasting it, right? Showing up, allowing ourselves to show fully and authentically and having the world benefit from it. I love it.
Well, and what I love, I'm sorry, I have to say it, but what I love is under all of what we just talked about is this notion of love. loving yourself fully enough to forgive, fully enough to listen, fully enough to transform, fully enough to show up, fully enough to be empowered. It's love.
It is. And it has to start with us. And that's where I feel like that there's such a big disconnect, because we learn love from outside ourselves, right? Coming back to childhood. And then as we grow, we're like, what? Where does it come from now? You know, if you have failed relationships, if people, you know, reject you, you were kind of lost. And that is something else that I love about the work that we do, is helping adults, hopefully, to turn around and teach their kids, like we are showcasing for our kids, that it can start at an early age too. You can embrace and you can love yourself, but in order to be able to showcase and teach that, we need to learn to live it. So
yes. Awesome.
Thank you so much. Well, tell us how to find you. Tell us the title of your book again and how to find it. If it's on your website, tell us all the things.
So the title of my book is The Happiness Recipe, A Powerful Guide to Living What Matters. And you can find it on my website, but also you can find it at Amazon and other places online that books are sold. Nice. And my website, I'm going to keep it super simple because it's one-stop shopping. You can find all my social links there. And that is untanglehappiness.com. So no D, just untanglehappiness.com.
I love it. Thank you so much, Becky. This was so insightful. I am so grateful, and I am sure many people will get amazing things out of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to connect with Becky, and please leave the show a review if you haven't yet. As you know, there is no like button on podcasts, so you have to show that you liked what you're hearing by leaving a review on iTunes, or like I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the episode, take a screenshot of the episode that you were listening to, tag me on social media, and let me know your takeaways. Until next time, bye.